Welcome to the Get Over Yourself podcast, where we explore the power of mindset, success, and authentic stories. Join us as we delve into life experiences that challenge traditional thinking patterns, providing valuable insights and inspiration for personal growth. Get ready to embark on a transformative journey as we analyze those stories and uncover the keys to unlocking your true potential. It's time to reshape your mindset and embrace a new path towards success. Get ready to be inspired and empowered right here on Get Over Yourself. Let's get right into it. Hey, my name is LaSharis Luster, and I am with a co-author with Get Over Yourself, How to Move Without the Ball. And today I have my dad's oldest brother's baby daughter with me. And oldest out of how many kids, Lonya? Do you know?
Three.
No, out of our parents, how many kids total?
Oh, wow. So it's 14 of them? 7 girls, 7 boys.
Yeah, my dad's the baby, your dad's the very oldest. So there's like a huge little gap between us.
Yeah.
Kanye was one of the first individuals to read the book, and we are going to have a conversation about how the book interests her and maybe some similarities in her life that drew out for her in comparison with the book, and then we'll just take it from there. We'll start by allowing Nyane to introduce herself.
Okay, thank you. It's very odd, I have to say, to hear Lonya come out of your mouth. Cheers. I have my name Lonnie for LaShares. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it, and congratulations to your family as a whole, as a couple, and of course, extenuation from your kids. Just fabulous. My name is Lonya Northcutt. Like LaShares said, I am a relative, but not only just a relative, I feel like I'm also a friend of LaShares. And the reason why I say that is because over time your relationships mature, and so we have definitely been able to connect in different ways beyond just relatives. So I respect her professionally, and as a person. My background is in education and in counseling, and I had the opportunity to also participate in mediation. I'm in Michigan and in Texas. It was paid, and some of the opportunities were volunteer. Currently, I am a caretaker, however, to my husband, because we were involved in a car accident, and that caused a drastic change. So the book also gave me a help and an aid to really summarize what I was actually already doing. So I like textbooks. I love reading a lot. And the reason why I like to read is because an author is able to take what you were already feeling or delve into it and put it in more precise words for you. So I'm going to take the information and talk about what I found interesting. So I would like to start with the prologue.
Okay, let's go there.
Okay. I love the prologue. And the reason why I liked it is because it introduced a false idea, and then it introduced to me wise counsel. And the reason why I say it introduced the false idea is because it started off by saying that we need worldly tchotchkes, those miscellaneous items in your lives, like clothing, certain types of people, opportunities. And that's a false ideology, because there are opportunities that stretch beyond just the things of our lives. And it gets to a little bit more deeper with the passion. And so wisdom basically tells us to look at this goal. The goal is to understand that change is success in itself. Just keep moving, which is a mantra that I always say. If you continue to keep moving, there will be a change, and the growth is success. So if you continue to keep moving and you continue to keep developing as a person, that effort in doing that is the success that you're actually seeking. And then everything else falls underneath that title.
So I completely understand what you're saying, but I guess my question is that to keep moving,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the things that you've done to mindset wise, or what are some of the challenges that you have had in order to keep moving? Because we say that and that sounds very simple,
Right.
but in a life or in a day in life, I think I have it bad, somebody else has it worse. People go
Mm-hmm.
through depression, obviously there's mental health, other, what do you do to keep moving, to tell yourself that, okay, I gotta get up, I gotta do this,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna get this back, but I still have to keep moving? How
Mm-hmm.
do you motivate yourself to do that?
Oh, good question. I'll give you a great example. And just like this morning, I am personally not a runner, but I run. um, and I had to get over in order to start running. I had to get over the feeling and let my actions catch up, or my emotions rather catch up to my actions. So I had to continue to keep persevering. So, for example, this morning, again, like I said, I'm not a runner, but I started walking, and then I moved into a run for 2 miles. And my heart, of course, always starts to palpitate faster. My interest level decreases, but I ignore those emotions and tell myself I need a goal. And so my goal is to finish these 2 miles. And so I focus in more so on the goal and then ignore my emotions. And then after I ignore them, then I'm able to move past them and then get to the goal of finishing the 2 miles.
That's really good,
Mhm.
because when you're saying that, I'm putting myself in, because I actually was a runner.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
But not a long distance runner. And I do exercise. And when I get out there, you'll start to do the fast paced walk, then you'll get into a run, and your
Mhm.
body will start telling yourself, okay, I'm hurting. My ankles are hurting. My shins are hurting. I can't, I need to slow down, or let me just walk. And so you're
Mhm.
saying, ignore those voices, ignore
Mhm.
the feeling of your shins are starting to tighten up,
Mhm.
ignore all of that, and just tell yourself, I
That I
need
have to push through. Yeah, and I have to push through. And I understand balance, don't get me wrong,
to. Mm-hmm.
but I have to get past the uncomfortable to get to the goal. And a lot of times, of course, that's the goal of life in itself, is to make ourselves as comfortable as possible.
Right. Which
But in order to get to certain goals, you're going to have to do what? Put
be
yourself in an uncomfortable
uncomfortable.
position.
Right.
I love I'm so thankful I'm a mother of 2 children. But and of course, in order to have those 2 children, many analogies have been made that you have to push through the pain in order for the joy for the child to come. And so, and it came from every single stage of their lives so far. And it's definitely happened, of course, in every single stage so far for my life. In order to get to certain places, I knew I had to, I understood that I was hurting, but I had to also understand that I had to push through the pain and then be able to say, hey, what's really important here? What is my goal here? And my goal is, to get to a certain place, either financially, get to a certain place in parenting, a certain place in a career, certain places in my towards being a caretaker towards my husband, and getting past all of those emotions and then being able to reach that goal.
Wow. So
Mm-hmm.
two things you said. The first one is, and I always go by it, but it's kind of hard sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Getting past and ignoring the emotion and the
Right.
feelings. And that is important only because I don't think that people realize that feelings and emotions are
Mm-hmm.
like, they go up and they go down, and they're great and then they're not great. And so
Right.
if you do allow yourself to be guided by your feelings and your emotions, then you find yourself in some place that doesn't align with the objective or the
Right.
goal, because you're
Mm-hmm.
simply going by your feelings. So I
Right.
definitely agree with that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then second, being uncomfortable, because we've been told, oh, I mean, even with my Airbnb guests, I'm like, oh, are you comfortable? And in that sense, it's fitting,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Mhm.
people have been told all their life, if you're uncomfortable, then you need to do something about it. If you're not,
Mhm.
if you're comfortable, you need to be comfortable. But
Mhm.
really, it should be the opposite. You need to be
Mhm.
uncomfortable,
Mhm.
because if you're
Yeah.
uncomfortable, then you're motivated to do something to change it.
Right. And I don't think we necessarily train ourselves to think that way, like you're saying. So it's a change. It's a mentality, which is the book, that's the core of the book, changing your mental place. And that's just life in general, being able to really have a understanding of your constructs, of your storylines, and being able to know, what am I supposed to um, be experiencing in life? How am I supposed to be trained? My kids always tell me, said, wow, mom, I always feel like you're training us for some kind of war, some kind of battle. And I said, well, life really is that way. I said, because it's if I trained you to be, again, comfortable, then you wouldn't be striving, because life in itself doesn't offer those opportunities often. But when you can seize the opportunities to rest, because that's a part of development, but at the same time pushing yourself to understand that, yes, we are in a battlefield. Yes, these are the tools that I need to survive. Yes, I need to make sure I'm cognizant of that, and not run away from what life is actually offering you. And because if you want change, you're going to have to get out of a comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So going into the quarters, what quarter are you going into?
Oh my goodness. Like you're talking about undulating, right? It feels like it's right now. It's real interesting. I feel like so many different areas, because the people that I'm dealing with. I also help my parents,
Right.
and they're in the last quarters,
Mhm.
because of the health of my. He's also in the third and fourth quarter in life.
Mhm.
My kids, I feel like I'm getting ready to allow them to go to the second quarter, but I can still see some first there. Uh, and what I mean by that
No,
is,
I get it, yeah.
we're right, but what I mean is that we're not necessarily they're not necessarily on the indoctrinated into those places yet. They haven't received the tools 100% to be placed in those particular positions.
Right.
They're still working on shaving off childhood and moving into adulthood.
Right.
So when you hit those places in life where you're like, I'm almost there, but I'm not quite there, you're placed in a position where you're um, sad to let go, but
Mhm.
understand the
Mhm.
necessity of letting go. And both my kids, they did say that. They said, wow, which brings another part of your book about words. Uh, what's interesting is the things that they thought they were supposed to be, because they created an
Mhm.
image of themselves, and society, environmental issues created an image for themselves. They're learning in these different quarters of life that those definitions weren't the definitions defined correctly.
Right.
Just for example, my son, rather, he always says, mom, um, I'm known as the nice guy.
Hmm.
But when he had to learn how to start setting boundaries to move into
Right.
the second quarter of his life, right? Um, he didn't understand that the definition of nice that your environment was telling you is not the definition of
Right.
nice. I said, you're going to be abused by
Right.
being a people
Mhm.
pleaser. You're not going to be able to have healthy relationships
Right.
unless you learn this very powerful word. And that was the word, like your
No.
husband said, no, right, no, no, no. But it's hard, because you're shedding some of these things. It's hard. I remember counseling a group in the Alzheimer's Association, and I'll never forget. We did this exercise, and everyone had to go into their closets, and they had to start changing over to the next season of their lives, just like you would do for seasons
Mhm. Yeah.
the calendar year, right?
Mhm.
But this was a different season, and I had clients starting to cry,
Wow.
because there are certain places that they will never revisit again, certain clothing that they would never use again, certain clothing that their loved one that they were taking care of would never use again or wear. Their sizes have changed, their ability to be able to wear heels. Like one lady, I'll never forget, she said, "Oh, let me explain to you. These were my heels. My heels. Let me tell you, Lonya, these heels are oh, I would walk into the room and everyone she perceived, everyone would look at me because of my heels. And I said, I'm sure. I'm sure. She said, no, you don't understand. And she started crying. She said, because it wasn't just they were looking at me, they were looking at my husband and I. And we will no longer be able to walk into those places again because he is not capable of walking with me. So when I'm saying goodbye to these heels, I'm actually saying goodbye to a certain lifestyle.
Right. Wow.
And so my kids are saying the same thing. There are things that they have to let go of. You know, they want to keep the teddy bear from their childhood. And I'm like, no, we have to now, you know, let another little child have that teddy bear. You know, you move past those points of your life, but it's excitement. You know, we talk about, you know, being prepared, but there's an excitement to change and to grow up and enjoying each season. And, you know, some people say, oh, well, the season, you know, the fourth quarter is a sad season. Is it? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, it's a finish line season. It's a, wow, look, I was able to complete the struggle of life. You know, the war is over. I have been successful in helping the next generation, if that was your position, or help someone. And I'm now exhausted of the process. And so this is my reward. I get to finally rest.
Right.
So what season? I would say I'm a mix. I'm mixed.
I'm glad you went back to that, because I'll say that you said in the beginning you respect me, but you have no idea how much I respect you. When I talk about this book, you know, and it was based off of Eric's ideology, and this is kind of what we framed in our life. And I would say I sometimes am still in process of all, right? But when I think about what this book means and what it encapsulates, you are the epitome of what we are talking about in this book. Simply, I asked you, what quarter are you in? And then you told me, oh, well, my kids are in this quarter. My husband's in this quarter. I'm in the sandwich generation. My parents are in this. I'm taking care of my kids, and you're taking care of your husband. You told me others. And so the book is talking about putting others before you put yourself. And so the way you even responded to the question, you didn't even tell me about you. You told me about the people that are in your life that you help take care of and make sure that these people get to where they're supposed to be going and be successful in their own right.
Right. But in making them successful, that's my success as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, because that's my goal. See, you know, you had to identify what was your goal in life, you know, what was your purpose, your drive. And honestly, my drive, my passion is to make sure that the resources, the opportunities are not just selfishly given just to me, but that I'm able to make sure that my children are equipped with the tools, like the battle, the tools in order to not only to live through life, but strive through it. And so there's mental places, that things that if I did not change, if I stayed focused on a career, which was very challenging not to for me, but to give myself away in certain places, I had to learn to lose to win. So I'm winning, but I had to, just like you said, make myself uncomfortable to make sure that my household is going to be prepared for their next quarter.
Absolutely. That is, if I was in a room with a lot of people, I say, give her a little round of applause. No, because that you're saying that. So, I mean, we see it on social media and all these things.
Right.
The women, you know, they're like, oh, I'm a boss. You know what? I'm a boss chick and I got to do this in my career and I have to make this much money and I have to do this. And in while all of that is going on, you know, you're excelling in your career, you are fit for whatever comes your way. But then when you look back, there are things inside of your household that are falling, I wouldn't say all the way apart, but there are things that need your touch. And we decide that we want one over the other because the other seems like it's more important, you know, because it makes us feel good. Let's go back to that because that's what it is. It makes us feel good. But then there's so much that can be lost, especially when you have a husband, when you're taking care of kids, you know, all of these things can be lost. And then the only thing we can't have control of, one of the things, time. There's no way to go back and change those things. You just got to kind of work with it as it goes, but it's almost sometimes too late.
Yeah. It was really interesting to also to look at when you can continue to keep reading after the prologue of the book, the contradiction of the ball itself. Because you gave the analogy, Eric gave the analogy of the ball. And it was interesting to look at paragraph 2 of the prologue of the ball. And he said that the ball was a hindrance because it represented the self-doubt formulated through the low self-esteem and ignorance of wealth. If I did not understand that I had value in my position, then I then could not sacrifice, because my identity, my feeling of being a higher self-esteem was going to rest in the fact that I had to have a position, I had to have a title, I had to have a certain amount of money, I had to do that. So I was going to be my own hindrance. It was going to hurt me. And if I'm hurting me, I'm hurting my household. So then I saw also the transformation of the ball. And when he looked at the transformation, he said, oh, wow, which became encouragement, which became family, and the abstract resources like intelligence. And so you had to, again, this whole book is about reevaluating the way you think. And I know one of the quarters, I think it was like the third quarter, is evaluation of your life.
Yes.
Well, that's the reason why I can also have to say that I'm between quarters because I'm constantly evaluating.
Right.
So as I'm in that quarter, I'm thinking to myself, wow, okay, I've accumulated, I've done, now what do I do? What do I do? Where am I right now? Do I need to go back? Do I need to go back and revisit some things? It's just like, you know, learning. A lot of people don't want to go back to the basics, but the basics is what they need.
Right.
And so I was telling myself, I said, wow, I have to go back to the basics. But I had to learn that may have been a loss, but it was a loss to get to a win.
Right.
So again, it was talking about talking about the mind shift, changing the way you think, changes your outlook, changes your opportunity. And that was, again, like the pre-game strategy, your perception.
Would you say that early on in like the initial part of you, early on, Lonnie wife, Lonnie mother, did you always think like this?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, this is maturity. This is maturity. And this was, you know, maturity through experience. You know, you had some places in life you're just humbled to those places, not by choice, but it's actually a silent blessing. And I won't even say silent blessing because sometimes it's so loud, but it's a blessing in disguise, because there would not have been any change. I wasn't built that way.
Right.
I was built that you go to college, you earn a degree, you go get another degree, you work, and then in between time you're going on vacations. Everything was scheduled in my life.
Right.
I had it scheduled. It was rote. It was completely rote.
You know, and I remember because when I came to Texas to visit the campus, I think the first time, you were in charge of scheduling some things, and it was like, I got to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I learned, you learn, through your growth, like what is it that again, but again, I'm a Christian,
Yeah.
and I'm definitely guided more about eternal promise than I am with the like we said, the Choskis of this world.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm talking about change, and what's more important is if I'm talking about generational wealth,
Mm-hmm.
I can't make money and think that I've created generational wealth.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Generational wealth is a mentality. So
Yes.
I'm having to step into a mentality. But if you were to go look at the really well off people in the world,
Mm-hmm.
look at how they became well off. Somebody is sacrificing
Oh yeah.
for that mentality to
Oh
be
yeah.
established. Right. They're established a whole lot. So it's not gain, but you're actually teaching yourself how to give,
Yeah.
and learn to lose. Again, I keep going back to it, to win. And
Right.
it's challenging because we don't live in a society where loss is identified as a good thing. Like we don't look at a society as death is a good thing.
Right. Yeah.
Aging is a good thing. We put so many negative connotations to these either these words or these seasons in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
but there's beauty in it. And again, changing your perspective of it. Definitions can struggle. I always tell it can also strangle, not struggle, but strangle authenticity. We conduct ourselves because of our environment, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
The way our environment defines us. We live out the given definition, that the world has given us of these words, of
Mm-hmm.
these successes. And you're really having to really identify. You can read books, you can get the information, but you still have to come back to yourself and say,
Right.
what really is success for me?
Right.
What does that really, and that's what I'm saying, that's maturity. So I haven't always thought that way because it was defined as gain. And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm like, wow, I'm so proud of myself because I was able to give. And I can go to my grave now and feel so happy.
Yeah. You're amazing. You're amazing. You're right though. We were taught the gain, and that was our way to success. But I defined it now as we have to kind of unlearn everything we learned,
Yeah,
because there's a new way. But I don't discredit what I did learn because I feel like all of the people, our parents and grandparents and all that, all what they were gaining and their mentality helped them survive through the culture and the traditions and whatever was happening at that time in the world, right?
absolutely.
So obviously, technology's come about and it's changed a lot. Communication is great. You can learn and find anything you want in a matter of seconds, no
Mm-hmm.
matter how young you are. Um,
Right.
so that creates a different type of environment that we all have to adapt to.
Right.
And based on what you said, yeah, we could still be gaining, but we already have so much more than what everybody else had
Yeah. Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So why not give?
Mm-hmm.
No?
Well, and not just the giving, but giving out of reason. There's a
Yes.
purpose. It's purposeful. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just I'm just giving because I have access to excess.
Okay.
That's not why I'm
Yeah.
giving. I'm giving. It's a sacrifice.
Sacrifice. Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's a sacrifice because I've maybe never ever changed certain things in my life, certain titles I've never attained. I would be giving that up. Certain places to live, I'd be giving that up. And so it's more so I understand the rationale behind why I'm doing. That's the maturity. I'm understanding the rationale. I'm not just doing just to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
not trying to follow a script.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it because I finally figured out that it has to be done in order for change to occur. It
When do
has
you
to be.
think,
It
take
has
me
to be
back to
done.
that moment where where you woke, I would say woke up, but
Yeah.
where you came to this moment and you're like,
Mhm.
okay, I gotta think this way in order for me to do X, Y, Z.
I
Like,
remember that
when was
clearly.
that?
I remember that
Take me
clearly.
there. Take me there.
Yeah, I was in the hospital. I was looking at my husband, and he was in ICU. And I got a chance to sit and just look at him. And I remember the pain that I felt. Oh my gosh, because of the great loss. And I knew that this was permanent. And the tear that came down my face, I had never had a burning tear. I had read about burning tears, but I had never experienced one. And so the tears, they literally cut your face. It's, you just feel like they're just literally cutting into the skin of your face.
Mhm.
And I went home, and I was able to be with my kids, and I looked, and they looked so small, and they were 4 and 6 at the time when the accident. They were very young, and my son had just turned 4, and they were so concerned. And I just knew my daughter was going to have a nervous breakdown. I knew my son would never really clearly know his father, because at 4, you just know, you
Yeah.
start, which he did. He started to do this afterwards, creating stories. Never happened, but he would create stories about his dad.
Oh.
And so I knew, as I started moving through the days, that they needed help. Like, this was going to be a job. This wasn't going to be a part-time job. This was something that I was going to have to use all my resources, my education background, my counseling background, my playground background, my fight in me, playground fighting. I had to pull everything that you can possibly think, my organizational skills, anything I had resource wise, it had to be given to them in order for me to know that they had an opportunity, a chance to survive childhood healthy. Because a lot of times people always say, oh, kids can get through anything. They can get through anything. I said, you don't understand. They can get through it,
But how?
but they adopt
Yeah.
unhealthy coping mechanisms to get through it. So in essence, they may have, the time would have lapsed, it would have passed. But in reality, they are still stuck emotionally back at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I said, I needed my kids to graduate. But in order for me to be available, I literally had to be around 24/7 to be with them, to be at every single program, to be with them in, waking up until they went to sleep at night, or when they even got up at night because of nightmares. I had to be with them. And I knew I could not give outside of my home so much that I was so exhausted that I was giving them my leftovers. They had to have my first. And that was my tithe and offering for my kids. That was my time. That was my sacrifice. That I had to do that. And I had to do the exact same thing for my husband. I knew if I wasn't going to be available to him as well, then I knew that his condition wasn't going to even have a chance of being able to make the progress that he was able to make. He was able to make progress. He's still not able to move back into a career, and he cannot write his name. But he knows who his children are. He knows who we are. And even though he hobbles when he walks, he's able to walk. Even though he has difficulty speaking, we're able to hear his voice. And so, there are losses, but because I was able to give so much into my family, we actually are a healthy family. We're healthy individually, and we're also healthy as a unit.
Yeah.
So that was the moment when you actually see that there was a need, and I paid attention to the need. That was my moment.
Okay. And even that, like supporting, encouraging, those things evolve,
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
with you, you had to evolve into caretaker. You had to just completely evolve into, okay, what do the kids need now? How am I going to make this person present, even though they're physically here, but not mentally,
Right.
am I going to make a presence so that our family is
Well, yeah, and I'll bring it back to the
not
book.
a good word, but
Right. But I'll bring it back to the book itself, because the book also talked about, underneath the heading of perceptions, creating a support system that would allow you to develop and to grow, you know. So I had to create a support system for my family, right?
Yes.
In a different way. And of course, you are always your child's first teacher. Of course,
Right.
you're there for them as a count. But I had to place them in the position that this was going to be my full-time responsibility.
Right.
And so my audience was outside the home at first, and now my audience was in my home. And you don't, and that was that was not popular,
But it
because it looks right. It's not popular because society again tells you, oh, you're supposed to be doing these things, and you're not doing these things, therefore you're not successful. And I tried it. I did. I went back to school, got more certifications. I was because I was trying to listen. Right. So that's why I'm saying it was an evolving process, because I kept thinking, well, but society must be right. Society must be right. Right. So I need to go do everything the society says. And every time I moved outside of my purpose for my family specifically, there was conflict, right. Strong conflict. And I could tell that my family was suffering for it. It's real interesting as we mature through experiences, underneath the heading of the book, with other people, we start to think and compare and change. And it's odd, oddly at times, right? When we start to compare, it looks odd because it's clumsy. As we experience things, we mature, people think, oh, it's supposed to look the sophisticated way, right? No, you look clumsy. You look clumsy. You look like, the girl who wants to, learn how to put on makeup. You look like a clown. You look like a clown. Right. And it's not because, and the reason why it's clumsy is because, again, it's not complete. You don't have all the information. So you're operating off of some information. You don't know, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not complete. So it's in pieces of new information, though. You added new information, but it's in pieces. Right. And so you look and you sound to your family and your old friends, even if you're on drive, you look odd. You sound, because you're sounding so different, right? Mm-hmm. So you start to learn that, wow, my team support may have to change. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And so that's basically what has been happening. When you're starting to mature, you notice it's not that I don't love you. Right. I don't see how important you have been. I'm not going to throw the baby away with the bathwater. No. Mm-hmm. All of that, like you said, was survival for your generation, survival for this situation. Right. But where I am right now, I have to learn, again, what's selfless versus selfish. Right. Mm-hmm. And you may not fit into that category, which is perception number 2 in the book. Right. Mm-hmm. And I always tell my kids this, and they always say, they're like, Mom, I guess I am living my selfish years. Because I always tell them, I said, yeah. Right. I'm living selfish. And I said, and that's okay to live those particular years in your life, as long as you don't require other people to perceive or to believe, and you're allowing them to believe that you aren't living those selfish years, that you are and really identify what those selfish years really look like. What does it really create really clear boundaries? What does that look like? Mm-hmm. What you're willing to give during that time, capable of giving, versus not being able to be given. Right. Mm-hmm. And so know your goals, require that require of you, and who and what must be sacrificed for you to attain these goals. Mm-hmm. And set clear boundaries, and don't invite relationships into your life that you cannot afford. I always thought can you afford the price?
Right. Yeah.
Can you actually afford it?
Sometimes comes pretty steep depending on
Right, who it is, right, or what it is,
yeah.
or what it is. You want to drive certain cars. Well, not all the cars have the same gas mileage,
Right.
have the same insurance, have the same maintenance. They cost a little bit different. So don't lie to yourself or others, and don't be ignorant at the cost of your goal. And so that's what I had to always think to myself. I said, find your story, and who played it best. That's all I was telling. Find your story and who played it best, because we have everyone. These are stories are repeated.
Right.
I'm not the only person.
Characters. Yep.
Right, just different characters, right? But we have the same. But who played it the best, and know when I'm going to have to be selfish, and when I have to be selfless, in order to move through life. And like you said, it's that undulating, right? Our emotions are undulating, our opportunities are undulating, and know again what quarter, where are you?
Right. When you said that, when you tried to go out and do these things initially, the title, the job, the school, all of this stuff, and you said every time you came back, and it's, if I can say, it's that oh shit moment. Okay, I made the
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
You know what? Those happen whenever, and I'm very similar, because if I do something and I don't want to say I'm doing it for self. Like, oh, I need to get this title. I want to make this much money. I want to do this. I always end up, it's like a hamster in a wheel, and you're going over and over and over again, repeating the same thing until you figure it out and get it right and do it right the next time. And it always starts off with, I need to work on myself, or I want to finish this for myself. And I don't think a lot of people, I'll say this, I believe when people say it initially, they're saying it in a non-selfish way, because they're truly saying that, hey, there's a void in my life, and I feel like this or these things are things that I should do in order to accelerate, level up, whatever, be successful. But then as you're doing it, it becomes more selfishly, because you're focused strictly on that. That's your target goal. And you're like tunnel vision. If it's not geared around that, then you lose sight of everything else.
And this is the thing, and it's okay.
Yeah.
In the right season without certain people.
Yes.
It's okay. So, and that's why I don't want to throw away, ambition. I don't want to throw away that. I don't want to throw away,
you just have to be mindful of it.
But you have to be mindful. I mean, that's what counsel we always say, mindfulness. That's a big thing, mindfulness. And that part to me is the maturity part. I'm mindful, if I say I'm going to be someplace, I'm mindful that, this is, I'm taking away time from your schedule. But if you're living selfish years, you're not mindful of that. You take advantage, and you don't even know you're taking advantage. Right. So I can't necessarily yell and, scold you for that, because you're in those selfish moments, these selfish years of your life, and you don't even know that you're there. Right. And that's why I'm saying, be able to understand, like you said, what quarter you're really in and what are you supposed to be doing, but make sure that you have the right people around you for that season of your life. Because you don't want to hurt people. My biggest thing is I'm going to hurt people in my life anyway, but I don't want to hurt many of those people, number one. And I don't want to hurt, and I don't want to constantly be ignorant of the fact that I'm hurting people. Right. So take time out to be able to say, what season am I in? How am I able to be available to these people? And if I can't be honest with them, by being honest with myself. And so take some time to get to know you, and what is it that you're really, what stage of life are you on? what year, I go back to the football theme, what court are you on? But in addition to that, know where everybody else's quarter is too.
That's true.
Because that helps out. So, I know you're not able to be here available to me because you're in a place and I'm trying to put you somewhere that you don't even belong either.
Right. When you talk about support, was there ever any time, I know whenever you have to change, your support and you're outgrowing, your old mentors and you're trying to find these new people to learn from and be a mentor too, because sometimes we're mentee and mentor. Did you ever find yourself lonely?
Oh yeah, you're always lonely when you're like David Thoreau, right? The road less traveled. So even though these stories are repeated, these stories, depending upon what storyline you have, that's the cost. And I heard this great comedian say a lot of people that you perceive are quote unquote the happy people in the world are some of the most depressed, and you have to be very careful.
Yes.
Because those are the ones who are committing suicide.
Yes.
Those are the ones who are addicted to certain things. You have to be very, 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 very careful. And so in understanding that, again, I go back to find your story and who played it the best. Because then you can find out what did they have to do in order to survive the loneliness. What did they have to do? And so creating your sense of community. And I love this part. I was talking to the Alzheimer's Association, and something I always tell people all the time when they're in a crisis, especially with their family members, create your team.
Yes.
Everyone has to have a team. We're talking about football here, create a team, a really good, strong, I need a good quarterback, but I need a defensive, I need an offense, create a good team for yourself. So each of to avoid the loneliness for each person in the family, everyone has a team. Even today, each of my kids have a team. My husband has a team. I have a team. And the team looks like this, for example. They have, when they were growing up, my son had, he and my daughter had a piano teacher, but she wasn't just a piano teacher. She was our abuela. She was our grandma. And she would go out of her way to make sure that I wasn't just celebrating their birthday. It was, a household full of people who were celebrating their birthday. We had, people who were going to be their tutors, who were going to be their support system. And of course, you have to be careful. You're talking about little kids. People take advantage of people, right? So I would, of course, it was work for me to create teams because a lot of times I was sitting there with them, with their team players.
Yes.
So I didn't leave them alone. So it was work. But again, the sacrifice for the game.
Yes.
And now my kids look back, they're like, wow, Mom, when we were a part of this, when you allowed this person to come around, when you allowed this organization to be introduced to us, this opportunity to be introduced to us, that solidified, that helped build us. It helped scaffold. They even use the word scaffold. It helped scaffold to connect us to the next place that we needed to climb to in order to be the people that we are now. So now we feel more confident. We feel intelligent. We feel physically strong because they even have personal trainers now. They feel physically strong. All of those elements. But I can't ever say just that one thing because it was a team approach, says the book.
Yeah, well, it always is. So tell me what your team looks like.
Okay, so my team, of course, I always have a girlfriend group, and they are a solid girlfriend group. But I have my travelers. I have my girlfriends who we just go out for certain events, but all of them are very honest. and I love it. They don't sugarcoat anything. They tell me exactly what, if I'm being redundant in my speech, because my world may be limited in certain ways in conversations about certain, current events, or worries or concerns. And so they moved me past that. Also, I am a part working with in Spanish, like taking a different learning something new for myself. So you have your tutors, you have your exercise, group. You have your my Bible study, group. And so with that community, it creates a well-rounded person for me. Like, I'm still growing. I'm not isolated. I'm still being physically fit. I'm still watching, like, nutrition wise. And I have people who specifically talk just about nutrition, people who talk specifically about the Bible, people who talk specifically about physical fitness. And so that helps me to say, hey, my mind has to go to a different place instead of being stuck, because that's the hard thing, because the loneliness is saying I'm emotionally stuck. And so having to move myself and think about other things and not be the main character of the show, because that's what I want to do. I want to be the main character. And thinking, when I have my big group, I'm like, oh, and it's not a big group, but it's my group. They're thinking, hey, have you thought about things this way? Have you considered this? Have you talked about this? Do you know about this? And it removes me from staying focused on one subject, one problem, to introduce me to so many other things that I can talk about. It's like a person who just stays focused on just, when you meet them in conversation, they're talking about the job. I'm like, listen, honey. Right?
It's like,
listen, honey, there's more to talk
about you than your job. Like,
than your job. I promise you are more interesting than that.
But people hide behind it, And I mean, to be honest, you're there at your job longer most times than you are at home. Let's just be honest, 40-hour work weeks. But don't hide behind your title. And I think a lot of times people have gotten to the point where they feel shameful of being honest,
Right.
And so it's like, okay, anything that you can tell me, I've already heard it before, I've seen it before, I might have possibly done it before. So there's nothing, let's just have a real conversation here,
but this is the thing, and I do understand this, and that's the reason why your circle is not as big as you would love it to be. Like, everyone would love their circle to be so big, because a lot of people can't handle it.
Yeah, I don't know.
They can't handle honesty. They want you to make sure that you stay in character form and don't get outside of character form, because you're making me uncomfortable now. So I can't take you moving out of that. So let's make sure that we stay in character form. So that's the reason why my group says, hey, you are more than just, and we see your intelligence. It's just like, when you marry your husband, prayerfully, people, and I know not everybody does, but I mean, the reason why we all would love to, to be with the people that we are with is because when we look at them, we love the way we see ourselves through their eyes. We absolutely adore it. I remember dating this guy, and I knew it wasn't going to work, because every time I looked at myself through his eyes, it was always a complaint. I wasn't good enough. Nothing about me. He was just like, oh, but can't you just do? And I thought, wow, when I got with my husband, he was like, everything about you is perfect. I said, well, Seymour, when I do this, oh, I love it. It's more to love. Because, I love to eat. You don't know how big I'm going to get. More to you to love, babe. Just more to you to love. I said, wow. Then pass me that extra hamburger. No, but it was just, you learn that, you need positive but honest relationships, and for you to not have to be acting all the time.
Yeah.
And I know what professionalism is. Don't get me wrong. Yes, I understand that. And that is my authentic self too, being professional.
Yeah.
But then there's those moments where I need to step outside of professional to let you see my humorous side.
Right.
I need you to see my
vulnerability.
I'm sorry. Yeah, my vulnerabilities. Yes, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
Honest, those are qualities of good leaders. You can't walk around being like, oh, I'm tough, all the time. I got this wall around me of protection all the time. Right. Because people don't relate to that. People have
I love that. Yes.
things that they go through, and sometimes they need to see you as a leader go through those things too,
And this is the thing. When you said that, that's what my kids loved.
Yeah.
And when I talk to people, they're like, wow, Lonya, I took this lady out, I'll never forget, out to eat. And she says, you know, she told me, she said, man, Lonya, I just want you to know, thank you for being you, the whole version of you.
Yeah.
At first I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? She's like, wow. She said, I took her to this restaurant, and she said, wow, this evening has been amazing. She said, I ate things that had their eyes still in them. And I and I love it. I've taken other people out, and they'll tell me things like, wow, Lonya, I did not know you ate this much. Like, I did not know. And I'm like, yeah. I said, you get a chance. I said, I'm to know me, real me. I'm not a salad person. I'm a meat and potato person. I throw salad on the side, but I'm going to eat all my meal. I'm not a waster. Right. But that's me. And like you said, you know, to be able to see me, my kids actually appreciate my authentic side. So they know that they can fall down and they know how to get back up again. They know that all relationships aren't going to be prosperous, or all relationships aren't healthy. And they get to see, how do you handle that? You know, perception 4 in the book talks about fear. Yeah. And fear is crippling to change. Yeah. It cripples change. Yeah. It's fear. So we hold ourselves back, you know, harder than someone else holds us with their own hands. Mm-hmm. Our own fear will hold us back. So if I can control, because the concept is, if I can control somebody's mind, I definitely can control their body. Yeah. Without force. Right. Yeah. No chains needed. I can do that. And so our whole person says, hey, you actually don't have to have real chains about you, mm-hmm. but just your mind, your fear that is going to hold you back. So there's nothing like Satan. He can say, there's nothing. All I have to do is just add some fear in there. Right. And you know what, though? That sometimes comes from the closest people to us. Yes. I'll never forget when Eric and I first got married, and this was 23 years ago, that when we were going through our journey of going to school and all these things, he would kind of move a lot faster than me. And I had family members that would tell me, hey, you need to be careful if he goes to school, because once he gets his degree, he's gonna leave you. And when we were getting ready to buy our house, they were like, don't let him put the house in his name. You need to make sure you have your name on it too, because mm-hmm. he will mm-hmm. leave you. And mm-hmm. I think that those people knew that I dealt with those comments outside mm-hmm. of the people, but just the mm-hmm. comments mm-hmm. for probably 5 years before mm-hmm. I decided, okay, those things that were told to me, lies from the devil, mm-hmm. but through someone mm-hmm. else, mm-hmm. don't even align with anything in my life. They don't mm-hmm. align with nothing Eric's ever done. Mm-hmm. So they aren't true. But here I am holding them, and mm-hmm. it's creating fear. Yeah, yeah. And it's the thing. What they said, like you said, I'm not going to throw away, because this is how they survive. I got it. Yeah. So thank you for the information. And I can do what you said, but I don't want to do it out of fear. Right. But anything could possibly happen. Absolutely. You know, an accident can happen. Yeah. Just things in general. Someone could try to sue us. We need to LLC ourselves, and so I need to do it as a precaution, as far as being intelligent, because we live in a fallen world, and things do happen. Yeah. But I don't want to be my motivation for living life and making decisions out of a fear. Right. And so, that's the big thing, and when we look at those people, and we look at opportunities and look at everything, I want to go back to where you said we're at the quarter of halftime, mm-hmm. the stage of halftime now in the game, and reflection. Like, I feel like this is what we're doing right now, is reflecting, but showing gratitude. Like, I never want to, curse the people that, that came from. I want to be more compassionate and understanding where they came from. And then I understand where you operate out of fear. And this is what happens when you operate out of fear.
And most of them were told the same thing.
They were the same, and they're operating out of fear.
But it's strange how you can be told those things, and even though it doesn't align with you, mm-hmm. you can create it. Yeah. By making the statement have power. You can create it. And so unintentionally, you start doing things to make that statement true, even though it's completely false and it doesn't align with you. So
that's sabotaging yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. And that to me is
saying you have to be careful. Right. You have to be careful about what you're listening to, what you're repeating, and what you allow to have power. And
so that's what I always tell people. I say you sabotage yourselves. You know, and people talk about generational curses. I'm like, it was the mentality that caused the process to repeat itself. Right. And so, you know, I always tell you, I said, and you know, when reflecting, you're walking in victory, right? You're walking in gratitude. You walk like your true God-given identity. And with that comes characteristics. So he says, I didn't give you a spirit of fear, right? So you're walking in that. But again, he's like, yeah, you do live in a broken world, and things do happen. And you realize that you have collected during your halftime, you know, you've collected a lot of data, and a lot of tools are in your toolbox. And now you're like, you know what I need to be doing? I need to be using them.
Yes.
And I'm not going to necessarily have to reinvent the wheel, but by halftime, guess what? I don't have to ever say, my mama said, my daddy said. I can actually at this stage say,
I said, or
I said, or because of experience. That's right. Yeah.
That's crazy. So let me ask you, I have this one, I think, last question. So you and I are and many people are in the same position. I call it, you're in a double sandwich generation. But a sandwich generation, I don't know if you've heard the term, but it's a term used by people who are simultaneously caring for their aging parents while also supporting their own children or grandchildren. This group is often caught in the middle of two generational responsibilities, and many face financial, emotional, and time-related challenges as a result. They may be juggling responsibilities such as managing their parents' medical care and finances, while also providing emotional support to their children and helping to pay for their education or living expenses. This can create a high level of stress and emotional strain, as well as financial pressure for those who are trying to balance these competing demands. So I have my in-law side called me. I have my parents call me. I have 3 kids who call me. And I have, you know, my husband who's right here, but he calls me. What do you think? How can you describe that side when it relates to your aging parents, and how have you I would say structured things to be able to be who you need to be, or who you need to show up for on that side, on that front?
Well, 2 things. Number one, no. Boundaries, right? Okay. So no. But realizing seriously, but that I take that seriously too.
No, I know.
No, I do. But in addition to that, I have to know what my roles are. You know, what am I supposed to actually be doing? So number one, I have to always say, what is my role? You know, I'm not someone's savior, right? So sometimes I want to put myself, and I definitely want to put on the apron of and clothe myself in titles and in responsibilities that aren't mine. And so I have to know, what do I have? What's ownership? What do I actually have? And what is my roles and responsibilities in that role? And knowing what comes first, which role has to come first. So it's always going to be my husband and my kids. My parents will always come after them. That's a guarantee. And what does that look like? That looks like I would have to get, and which I do, assistance to help them, like for yard work or for opportunities that they want to travel or what have you. I personally sent them on trips. I have, I've gone on trips, many trips with them, right? But I make sure that the trip was not just about them, because I'm taking my kids and my husband. And so I was introduced to Airbnbs when I introduced them into the vacation opportunities that I offered them. and to make sure that my kids were very comfortable and not placed in a corner in a hotel room.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You know, so I had to know, like, what is it that my roles and responsibilities are. My dad called me the other day, I'll never forget, and it's hilarious. It's just happened. He became very livid, and I have to accept that you this is uncomfortable for you. You know, this is uncomfortable for you, but guess what? You're going to have to be uncomfortable, and you have to now do what? Change.
Yes.
Or, you know, just accept, and you're going to be uncomfortable. So he called me, and he had already been upset with me from another no, and now he was getting ready to be upset with me with this no. And this no was, I started the conversation with, "Hey, Lonnie, hey, baby girl, I need you to do something for me." And I said, "I may or may not. I don't know what it is." "No, I need you to do this for me." I said, "I may or may not. Tell me what it is." And he said, "Well, I need you to do this." And he said the following words, and I had to tell him no. "For Publishers Clearing House." I said, "Stop. Stop. Stop. I have very important things to do.
Right.
And you want me to do something." And he was livid. No, he was really upset.
Sure. I'm sure.
Because that was important to him.
Yes.
And it could be important to him. And I said, "Now, I can't do that." I said, "However, you have a neighbor, or you can wait until a particular time and I can assist you, but I'm not going to drop, stop, and roll like it's a fire right now for Publishers Clearing House." So I had to learn that my parents were going to evolve into childlike tendencies. They were going to do the pouting.
Yes.
They were going to do the anger. And I had to not notice it was not just going to be them. It was going to be, I had neighbors when I couldn't watch their kids for them. You know, it was going to be,
everybody.
You know, right. It's going to be everywhere. It happens, just in your environment, setting limits. So that sandwich generation is, what you really need to do is make sure that you know what is your role and responsibilities, categorize them, put them in order. What role do you have first? What comes second? What comes third? And what do those roles, what is the requirement of those particular roles? Because people say, "Well, I just feel guilty." No. I don't feel guilty when I know that I'm one person and I can only do so many things. And my role is not supposed to be savior. That's God's role. So God's supposed to save, but you're asking me to do things that aren't a part of that role and responsibility. So you're wanting me to adopt environmental definitions, circumstantial, definitions in order to make you comfortable. But just like I have to be uncomfortable at times,
right?
You have to be uncomfortable too.
Right.
And that's how I handle the sandwich generation.
No, you say that and we laugh. But I never will forget in 2008, the one person, and it was my neighbor, she lived across the street from me. Her name was Meredith, and she had 3 boys. And then at the time, I only had one, our oldest, Cyrene. And I was running late, which I never am running late, but I was running late this particular day. And I called her and I asked her, "Hey, Meredith, do you mind grabbing Cyrene off the bus with your boys? And I'll be there in 15 minutes. And she said, "No." And it was just like that. No explanation, no nothing. And you know me, I would say it as my 20s, I was a spoiled brat. So I was just like, there was a weird silence because I'm like, okay, well, how do I respond? But when someone says that and they don't add anything else to it, it is very powerful.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful.
But we put people in positions to do things. You have to learn that they have the right to say no, and you have to respect that. But that's maturity, because we're coming in from situations, American, suburban USA, and not just us. I mean, just anybody. I mean, literally, depending upon how your perception of roles and responsibilities, and we give people responsibilities that aren't theirs. We don't realize that if someone did one nice thing for us, the response is thank you.
And that's it. Yes.
And that's it. And if a person doesn't want to do something, their right is to say no. And your response is, I understand.
Yeah, and that's what I said.
And you accept it. You just accept it.
But you know what? Back in the 20s, you know, when I'm selfish and all that type of thing, I didn't. It was surprisingly interesting how I responded even after that, because I honestly didn't know much about her, but her saying no, I respected her on a whole different level than I did prior to that. And I didn't question it. And we still were, you know, great neighbors to each other. But I needed that at the time.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting. I was reading, I reread classics. I absolutely love classics. And like I said before, the reason why I like to read so much is because the author is able to take what I may have thought or assumed or what have you, and place it into such a concise, beautiful literary way, you know, just absolutely love it. So in Wuthering Heights, Emily Bronte, when she was writing the book, she was talking about Catherine and one of the characters in the book. And when Catherine was introduced to her cousin, and she was also introduced or to both of her cousins, she did not receive the response that she was accustomed to. And they spoke not kindly in how she responded. And the author said, through the voice of her nanny, Nellie, said she was unaccustomed, and it was foreign to her to have had someone say anything beyond sweet, darling Catherine. She had never heard anything except beautiful accolades. She had never heard anything.
Right.
And so it was shocking to her to hear anything but the word yes, the word beautiful. And so when you move through life, you realize that you don't understand. You are blessed to have one person to say,
nice.
yeah, people are going to be nice, and people did not have to speak accolades, high, you know, esteem you with words of encouragement, or esteem you with beautiful titles, and people had rights to deny you of privileges.
Yes.
And your response is okay, and and if you want something, then you have to find another means to obtain that thing.
Yes. But you know what? That's something else that I learned. In order for you to be successful and for you to reach the level of where you need to go, you need people telling you truths. And those truths are not going to be nice. They're going to come off like someone's criticizing you. They might even be negative. They might hurt your feelings, but it's the truth. And,
and like you said in the book, or what Eric said in the book, you know, it's growth. You know, we don't realize the critiques. If you take the spin and you flip it, the critique is actually an opportunity for you to grow. Absolutely. Because you have to be able to not to look at it as an attack on you as a person, but to say, well, maybe let me analyze, let me evaluate that. Yeah, maybe it's true. Maybe I can, you know, and there's some things that I can tweak and become a little bit better. Or even if you're right, there was a different way to maybe to respond to a certain question or to a situation. There was a different approach, and you just never thought about it.
Absolutely. So last question, where do you see that this book being utilized? That would be
my goodness. Thanks for asking that question. I definitely see this book being utilized in an environment with adolescents, for sure, or for young adults. This is the period in their lives where they're trying to understand who and what they are as self-discovery time, and to have a direction, have some kind of roadmap to say, these are the feelings, these are the questions that you need to be asking yourself, and how you analyze life, and to find your storyline and be able to have the tools. I think each person, you know, in your life should write a book like this to find out who, you know, how did you make it through life, you know, this successfully. You know, we all, you know, a lot of people do ask their seniors, like, how did you become a millionaire? How did you become, you know, go to college? Or how did you have a successful marriage? Or, you know, how did you become such a great, you know, friend to many people? And so there are steps, there are procedures. It didn't just happen. And the book says, hey, let me give you the tools that you need, because that's what those stages of life need. You need those tools to help guide you through life in a way that you're not making so many mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, but so many that are so altering, and being able to change your attitude at a younger age where you're able to benefit from a transformation.
Wow. I thank you so much for doing this with me, because I know you're always kind of, you keep a tight circle and you have your priorities. So, and I respect that. So I definitely appreciate it, and you and Eric does too. And I'm appreciative, and I am so happy that, I guess, in this there was always a gap between everybody, living their life and having kids and husband, all these things. But somewhere or another, we caught up and we reconnected on a different level. And I do appreciate it. And I admire you to the fullest, because you are a Proverbs woman. Definitely.
I appreciate that. And I say ditto back to you. But I have to say, there was a school in Alton, Illinois that I attended, and I memorized Proverbs 31, Beltline Christian. I'll never forget it. And I memorized Proverbs 31. And I remember at that young age saying, I want to be her.
And tell us what that Proverbs 31 verse is.
Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. And it went into detail about how intelligent she was. It went into detail also about that in order for her, well, not just for her, but even for her spouse in the very beginning, that man that she was going to marry, or that the Proverbs woman was going to marry, he had to be so wise and ready to actually know that he had a Proverbs 31 woman.
That's awesome, cousin. All right, well, we will close there.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to the Get Over Yourself podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you like what you heard, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel to stay updated on future episodes. You can also connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for more exclusive content, behind-the-scenes insights, and community engagement. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, happy listening. And remember, get over yourself.